Something really special is happening this weekend, and it is the series finale of our very last, at least for a little while, video series, Meant to Be. Now, the entire series is available over on our YouTube channel for you to enjoy, and if you happen to like that series, we actually have a whole bunch of other ones for you to enjoy as well. So you can just keep the party going, you know what I mean? So head over to YouTube, Bound for Nowhere, to check out the series finale of Meant to Be on Sunday at 5 p.m. PST.
Arigatou gozaimasu!
Welcome back to Camp Nowhere. In this episode, we're actually going to be covering the second half of a story that I started in the previous episode, which is an audio diary from hiking the Michinoku Coastal Trail in Northeastern Japan. If you haven't listened to that previous episode, you will be a little confused. So I do recommend going back and listening to that previous episode, which is called Punishingly Beautiful. Once you have done that, come back on over to this episode and listen to this one. Don't worry, we're not going anywhere. For those of you who did listen to that episode, here's just a really quick recap before we dive back in. We are picking back up on day 3 of hiking, and in our first 2 days on trail, we came to understand that there was a massive disparity between our estimates for how much we thought we would be hiking in a day versus how much we were actually hiking in a day. We also were coming to this trail maybe a tiny bit unprepared as we were learning. And because of that difference in what we thought we were going to be able to accomplish on trail versus what we were actually able to do, we needed to start making some changes to our plans to ensure that we could actually finish on time and make our train ticket back to Tokyo at the end of the trail. All right, without further ado, let's get back on trail.
So it is now the end of day 3. I come to you from camp. I'm in this meadow behind this huge seawall, and this is actually a place where I'm looking around and I can see damage from the tsunami. Just on the other side of the seawall is the old seawall that was completely destroyed. They left some remnants of the old seawall just as a reminder. Today, as foretold, was going to be heavily edited based on our realization that distances on the map are not distances on foot, just not accurate anyways. So Owen and I spent some time looking at the map last night, and we made some adjustments to our plans. But before I get to that, so last night at the onsen hotel that we stayed at, we ran into the receptionist who helped us with our check-in. And because Owen and I have tattoos, we couldn't enjoy the public onsen. And so the receptionist tracked us down, and she was like, I really want you all to enjoy the public onsen. It's something very special. And she told us that we could go in the morning without, any issues with our tattoos. So this morning, after a massive set meal breakfast, which is a traditional Japanese breakfast, tons of tiny little plates, little pickles, rice, a whole fried fish, fish roe, all sorts of really interesting and diverse things. I decided to go to the public onsen, and it was absolutely incredible. I feel like before every day of hiking, I wish I could sit in an onsen. So there was a really hot pool. There was kind of a medium temperature pool that had a waterfall that you could kind of get a back massage from, and then a cold plunge, which was so delightful. In the private onsen, it's just a bathtub and 2 showers, which was very nice and was perfect for Owen and I last night. But it was nice to have the full experience this morning. So Owen and I decided to take a cab to the point where we could go to a convenience store to pick up food for the day on trail. And that cut out a fair bit of hiking. Honestly, it was kind of a lot of driving, so it's an unimaginable distance on foot. And we were hoping to hike 10 miles today, and we still managed to hike 16. So that's just a testament to how different map estimates are versus what we have on foot. And we also took a train at the end of the day. But we went through some beautiful sections of coastline, very rugged sea stacks, sea cliffs. We saw all sorts of wildlife. We saw deer. We saw a raccoon dog, which I did not believe existed. I thought it was a joke, but it is literally something. If you can envision a small dog crossed with a raccoon, that's exactly what it looks like. So we were very excited to see one of those in person. Got some new birds on my life list. Definitely hurting from yesterday, but it's kind of crazy to feel like we had really knocked down the mileage to be in the 10-mile range. And before we had even stopped for lunch, we were past 10 miles. So we're going to readjust. We don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. We're gonna reassess. But we've ended up here. We took a train from where we came off of the trail. Just one stop to get us down to a campground. And then we still had to walk like almost 3 kilometers to get to the campground. It never ends. But all in all, it was a good day. It was really beautiful, and we were supposed to have rain and we didn't, but tomorrow's supposed to be a bluebird day. All right. See you tomorrow. New life update. We went to make dinner. We brought from America our Jetboil, except for this is the minimalist one for lightweight backpacking, and it doesn't have an igniter, so you have to use a lighter. Our normal kit has a lighter, but since we had to fly with it, I took the lighter out. And I bet you can guess what we did not remember to pack. So we just went to make dinner. We are very far from any other food options. We do not have a lighter. So we are currently trying to rehydrate a bag of freeze-dried rice with cold water. Wish us luck. About to try this. See what the verdict is on dinner. It's a little crunchy.
But I can hear that.
It could be worse, though. Is this what backpacking is? Just like delusionment? Like convincing yourself that things
are delicious.
Are delicious when they're not. Maybe. Hey there. Okay, so I didn't do a day 4 check-in, and it's day 5 now, and day 5 is over. So I'm going to do a little recap on what happened on day 4. Luckily, it was a little bit of a down day. Because we have been getting punished so hard, we decided to take a little bit of a down day. And so how that ultimately ended up looking was we decided to take the train back a stop to where we had been the day before to try to catch a boat to go see the cliffs from the water. By the time we got out there, unfortunately, the winds picked up and we were not able to do that. So we got back on the train and we went 2 stops. So we broke new ground and we went to the small town of Fudai. And that is actually the end point of another section of the trail that we wanted to do. So what we did was we got an onsen hotel. We had a lovely rest day. We used the onsen to recover, relaxed, and we decided today, day 5, a lot of these hotels that we've been staying in have been offering to drive us because like we've been asking for taxi services. And they've just been driving us where we needed to go free of charge, which has been really lovely. So what we decided to do was this morning, we went from the onsen hotel and we backtracked to the start of where that we wanted to hike today, which ended up being about 15, 16 miles. And then we hiked back to the onsen hotel. We are not staying in the hotel tonight. We're staying in their campground, but we still decided to use the onsen tonight, which was really nice. But today was by far the most beautiful stretch of hiking I think that we've done. The beginning part of it was challenging. There was a lot of steep climbing. And then it kind of tapered off as the day went on. And what was so great about how we tackled today was because we were staying in the hotel's campground, we decided to set up our tent before we left this morning and fill it with all the gear that we didn't need for the day of hiking. So we were able to go with light packs. This was so nice because this was such a spectacular section of trail from a scenery perspective. It was really nice to just be able to enjoy it and to be able to move a little bit quicker. So when we got to the really scenic points, we could take some time and spend some time taking photos, taking video. And what is so cool about this section is really steep cliffs with tons of sea arches. And the water is just so blue. Owen and I have been talking a lot about how to best describe this place. So to give you an idea, we're parallel with San Francisco, so Northern California. It's humid. It's very sunny. The water looks like Hawaii. So it's almost like this interesting overlap. It looks like the Oregon coast, but with a more tropical edge to it, bringing in the water from Hawaii. There's tons of kelp. This area is known for their seaweed production and their uni, we found out today. So the whole hike today was in an effort to see all of these incredible sea cliffs and arches. And the hike actually, for a section of it, took us all the way down to water level, where we walked on the beach and then went through a couple of tunnels that had been blasted into the hillside and came out into these little bays. There was a ladder section that was really interesting. And when we got into the actual sea cliff section, there was just... It was just outrageously beautiful. We were spending a lot of time there taking some photos and video when catastrophe struck, and the wind knocked over our tripod with our video camera and lens on it, and unfortunately the lens literally snapped off the body of the camera, leaving part of the lens on the camera. So the lens is gone, very broken. Then the camera seems to have sustained a little bit of damage and the mic port is not working. Definitely a bummer. But the thing is, it's just stuff. It is replaceable. At least it wasn't one of us that went over the cliff. So that was definitely a bummer. Put a little bit of a damper on the day, but luckily we had captured a great deal of that section. It was towards the end. Really tried not to let that rain on the parade or take away from just the psychotic beauty of what we were seeing. But definitely a bummer. We'll have to see what happens with all of that. We're going to have a moment of silence for the fallen camera gear. Okay, that's enough. So anyways, we're in the tent now. I think that we ended up doing 15 or 16 miles. Tomorrow we are going to leave this area on foot and we will walk back into the town of Fudai, where I'm hoping to track down some calamine lotion because I have got some insane rash on my leg and butt. I suspect that I came in contact with either stinging nettles or poison ivy when peeing in the bushes. Glamorous life we're living. Well, that is the update for today. Absolutely amazing. Incredible hiking. Yeah, I feel like this section was the reason why we were here.
Let's take a quick second to get on the same page. I think that we can all agree that coolers weren't working. They're too bulky, too heavy, tons of wasted space. But Dometic has rebuilt them from the outside in. Recon is a cooler system that is 30% lighter than roto-molded coolers, making them lightweight and durable. Recon also features a vehicle-optimized system, so they're stackable, packable, and can be strapped down. My personal favorite is the dual-opening, removable lid, which allows you to access the contents no matter where you have it stashed. When you venture out for a trip into the unknown, no two trips look the same, right? So why pack like they do? Recon is a cooler system designed and built to flex with you. Pack more in, chill smarter, keep moving. With Recon by Dometic.
If you enjoy traveling and storytelling about traveling, maybe you'll be interested in our latest travel series, Meant to Be. The 6-part series follows our journey through Western Canada and the Barrier Islands as we check off our final bucket list destinations in North America. I don't want to give away too much, but I can say if you're listening to this podcast and you find some of the themes that we explore interesting, something tells me that you'll enjoy the series. You can watch Meant to Be over on our YouTube channel or on Patreon. Our Patreon community gets to watch episodes 1 week early and has access to a prologue episode for the series, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff too. You can find all the details for both of those shows in the show notes of this episode, and I hope you enjoy.
Well, today is the end of day 6. It was not originally going to be our last day, but now it is, because today ended in the emergency room. So last night, I think I mentioned a rash. Well, I thought it was originally stinging nettles, but it definitely progressed overnight. And then all of today, it seemingly was spreading. And it took on a form that I very much recognize. And I did some research, and turns out this is definitely poison ivy. So I'm going to start at the end of the day, and then we'll work our way backwards. When we got to our end point, which is in Coogee, I went to a pharmacist to try to get some cream to help deal with the expanding rash, which covers 50% of my butt cheek. It descends down my leg about halfway to the back of my knee. I also have it behind one of my knees, on one of my calves, on the side of another leg, and seemingly it's showing up in other places at random. So I went to a pharmacist, and after using Google Translate to slowly roll out the gruesome details of what I was experiencing, they decided that they didn't feel comfortable selling me a cream and instead told me to go to the emergency room. And ultimately, I'm glad I did, because it has gotten progressively worse as the day has gone on. I have full-on blisters. I will spare you some of the gruesome details, but I will say that I now have a Japanese medical card. And going to the doctor here was very seamless. Everybody was very kind and very patient, because obviously it takes a lot of work to communicate with me. But I was in about 15 minutes and saw a doctor. And I was joking as we were waiting in the lobby. I wondered if they had any stamps. So a big thing here in Japan is everywhere you go, any train station, any castle, any temple, a lot of times they have stamps. They're called stamp rallies. And so I've been carrying a notebook around with me, and at all of the rest stops and all the train stations, both on trail and just around Japan, I've been collecting all of these different stamps. So I was joking with Owen. I was like, hey, I wonder if the emergency room has a stamp. And I am pleased to say, well, they didn't exactly have a stamp, but I've got a really fun stamp on my receipt for 9,000 yen for seeing the doctor. So I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to put that in my notebook. Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm in a lot of pain because it takes up such a large portion of my leg. It got increasingly difficult and uncomfortable to walk today. So we woke up in the campground, and we decided to walk down the rest of the trail into town where we were planning on catching the train. Was absolutely gorgeous. It traced the coast on this elevated pathway that literally went through rock tunnels, like bridged over the water. It was glorious. So we did about 4.5 miles of walking to the train station, which is the same one that we had arrived at a few days earlier to go to the onsen hotel. And then we proceeded to take a 1-hour train all the way into the town of Coogee. And that 1 hour of distance that we covered on the train was initially planned to be covered on foot. So that pretty obviously illustrates how greatly we underestimated the challenge of the terrain for this trail. I think that Owen and I are going to need to have a little bit of a post-mortem about this experience. Our packs were too heavy. Our sleeping pads are uncomfortable. I definitely don't think that I have the right shoes. And it's so funny, we've been backpacking for so long, but every time you come across a new trail with a unique difficulty, it really illustrates like ways that you can improve and change. And a lot of times, some of it can be gear that can be swapped out. But I think another thing is a big thing, I think I just need to be stretching more. My feet just feel so haggard. I've been switching shoes for the last couple of years. Every time they kind of bite the dust, I try a new pair. I definitely don't think that I've come to find the appropriate shoes for me. But yeah, I just think that there's a lot that we need to assess to better understand why this went so, quote, wrong. I think that what is so fabulous, though, about the Michinoku Trail is you have the Japanese public transportation system at your disposal to, like, kind of hop and skip around, because a lot of the stuff that we didn't do today that we ended up traversing on train would have been road walking. And not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just harder on the body, not, quite as scenic. But it does take you through little towns and villages, and all that stuff is, fascinating and unique in its own way. So yeah, I think that the nature of the trail really allowed us to be a little bit more creative, given what the terrain ended up being and how long it ended up taking us to traverse it. But we got into Kuji, checked into our hotel. We were planning on taking a train or a bus out tomorrow and then hiking back to the hotel to kind of close that gap a little bit of what we did today on the train with light packs. But given that I am starting to have a difficult time walking because of my severe poison ivy. Oh, also note to self, if you have an allergy, a known allergy to a poisonous plant, such as poison ivy, I think it's a really important thing to remember to look ahead if you're going to be hiking in a different country to see if they have it and if it looks different, because Japanese poison ivy looks very different than the poison ivy we have in the United States. And it's so funny, as soon as I saw pictures of it, I was like, oh my God, I totally squatted to pee in this. I have been bushwhacking through this for days. No wonder why. It is all over my body. And it's crazy because I've definitely developed a sensitivity to poison ivy as I've gotten older. And I do believe that they say repeat exposures, it only gets worse. So we live and we learn. But so after we checked into our hotel today and went to the emergency room and got some medication and some gauze to keep my very large wounds covered, we just kind of putzed around Kuji to get a lay of the land. This area is famous for the ama, which are the free-diving Japanese fishing women. There's a museum here for them, and this area is also known for its amber and really extensive fossils that they have found in this area for dinosaurs such as the Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is so cool. So tomorrow I think that we're going to probably scale back pretty greatly what we were planning on doing from a walking perspective, go to a couple museums. Okay, I need to reapply gauze to my butt, so I've got to go. Good night.
It has now been 2 weeks since finishing the Michinoku Coastal Trail. I am happy to report that I am recovering, although there was a little hiccup in the recovery process. I ended up back in the emergency room for something totally separate. I got hives. I think that my skin was just very over it, and then ultimately ended up having a weird reaction to the laundry detergent that I used in Tokyo. That might just have to be another story for another day, but I'm happy to report that I am actually legitimately, better now. It was brutal there for a while. But I've now had some time to reflect on this experience of hiking the Michinoku Coastal Trail, and it's really funny because I think that it feels like it was a miserable failure in some ways. But when I'm thinking about it and I'm reflecting on the experience, that is not at all what I feel like I'm walking away with. One of the biggest things that jumps out to me is just how incredibly kind and encouraging the people were in that part of Japan. I think that after spending some time traveling around other areas of Japan that are maybe a lot busier, they're bigger cities, have a lot more tourism, I just think that the pace of life in this rural part of Japan it just moves at a different pace. It's very slow. And no one seemed to miss an opportunity to strike up a conversation. And I think that communicating with the people who live in the places that you're traveling to is really how you get a taste of a place. In this one incredibly adorable conversation that Owen and I had, we were outside of, it was kind of a train station / visitor center for the national park. And these two older women came up to us, and they obviously wanted to know what brought us to their quiet corner of Japan. They were really excited to hear that we were hiking the Michinoku Coastal Trail. They were really excited that we thought that their part of Japan was just so incredibly beautiful. And I made sure to tell them that I felt like everybody needs to see that area because of how remarkable it was. And I was just so impressed with their willingness to be like uncomfortable, so to speak, when trying to communicate with us, because, it is hard. They're saying things over and over again and trying to get us to understand. And thanks to technology, we can get there. It's just a process. And it was so cute. Halfway through the conversation, we were starting to realize that they were saying numbers. We're starting to get a little bit of a handle on some of the basic things. And so Owen was realizing that they were saying numbers, and we came to understand that they were telling us that the two of them, the youngest one was in her 70s and the oldest one was in her 90s, and they were out for a day of sightseeing. And the two of them did not look their age in any way, shape, or form. And it was so fun to get into a comfortable cadence of communication with somebody and have them be patient. So I made sure that I typed out a message to let the 90-year-old know that I didn't think that she looked a day over 30. And it was really awesome to get a laugh out of her. But to think that both of these women have lived through the earthquake and the tsunami, the devastation of which we were seeing the entire time that we were hiking, but yet they carry so much warmth and optimism that just felt like it transcended all language barriers. But I think that the biggest takeaway by far from this experience was in every way that the trail and the whole experience was hard, it was that much more rewarding. And this is an idea that I just feel like I keep stumbling into, keep running into it in both travel and in life. Because at the end of the day, we go out into the world and we have these experiences and we try to learn from them, but they're life lessons at the end of the day. And I think that what it is that you get what you put into something. Yes, this was a very physically challenging hike. Yes, we could have been a whole lot more prepared for it. It was incredibly difficult to plan because of the language barrier. It took a lot out of us. I got poison ivy. I went to the emergency room twice. We damaged thousands of dollars worth of our camera equipment, which was an accident. It will be repaired. It's fine. All of that happened. But I also feel like what I'm going to remember from this experience is just how incredibly rewarding it was. It was so rewarding to have all of these intimate conversations with so many people from such a very different walk of life. Their life experiences have been so different. I just think that seeing a new part of a country that is really speaking very deeply to my heart, and to have it just be so breathtakingly beautiful. But I also feel like when you are faced with a challenge, you learn so much about yourself in those moments. And on one occasion, we did have this woman walk up. This is, again, just another example of how incredible the people were. This woman's walking up to us. She clearly has something that she wants to say. And she already has the message typed out on her phone. And we're literally coming stumbling down the road with our backpacking gear on. It's pretty obvious what we're doing. And she points her phone at us, and it simply reads, "Do your best." That actually is a reoccurring encouragement that we heard all over Japan. And I think that there's so much truth to that. When you put your best in, you get nothing but incredible things in return, regardless if it shapes up how you envisioned it would.